Chapter 16. The Odd Sisters Grimoires. Circe sat on the floor of her eerily quiet house, surrounded by her sister's books. She had written her letter to Snow, and was now searching for something, anything, that could help her wake her sisters. The house's stained glass windows, depicting her sister's many adventures, did nothing to inspire ideas about how to wake them up. It was so strange, being in that house alone, flipping through her sister's books, and going through their pantry. She had found countless sleeping enchantments in their antidotes, but nothing to bring someone out of the realm of dreams, if that was in fact where her sisters were. If history told Circe anything, it was that there had to be some addendum to whatever curse had sent her sisters to the land of dreams in the first place. It was likely that the person who had cursed them would have to be the one to bring them back. Nevertheless, she searched. The black onyx crows had flanked the fireplace, stared into nothingness, while Circe searched in vain through her sister's many spellbooks and journals. Circe had to use all her willpower not to be distracted by the stories inside. Her sisters were so much older than her. She'd often wondered what their lives were like before they had to care for her. They never spoke of it, of the time before she was in their world, or of their parents, or how they had died. Circe's childhood was a mystery to her. She remembered nothing of her upbringing. Whenever she had tried to ask her sisters about that time, they had simply rambled off senseless words so that she would drop the subject. If only her power to rewind and look at time worked on her. She couldn't help wondering if those years were documented somewhere in the books. When she was a child, her sister's spell books would either refuse to open or scream in pain if she touched them. Her sisters had been alerted any time she had tried to spy on them, but now her sisters weren't there. She needed only to open the books, which simultaneously thrilled and frightened her. If her sisters' protection spells were broken, did that mean they would never recover from their ordeal? Usually a spell stopped working only when a witch was dead. Circe recalled Nanny telling her how Circe's spell had gone haywire when Ursula had taken Circe's soul. Nanny had worried that something terrible had happened to Circe, but she had recovered, had she? That at least gave Circe hope. As Circe sat with a stack of books before her, the light coming through a stained glass window featuring a single red apple caught her eye. She had seen the window countless times over the years, and she knew the meaning behind it. She knew fragments of the story. Anyway, as she knew only bits of the tales that had inspired all the windows in her home. But right then, the apple caught her eye and tugged at her heart. She thought of Snow White's book, and wondered what secrets it might hold. Just then, she heard a light tapping on the doorbell, so soft that she almost missed it. She opened the door to find a tiny owl hitting its beak against the large brass bell visitors normally rang to make their presence known. The tiny creature was so enchanted by his own reflection in the brass that he was completely oblivious to Circe. "Come in, little one. I will give you a biscuit," Circe said, scooping him up. The little gray owl hooted his thanks as Circe placed him gently on the kitchen table. He promptly stuck out his tiny foot, waiting for Circe to take the scroll that had been tethered there. He looked somewhat wobbly as he stood on one foot. Circe had to wonder how long the little owl had been delivering messages and with what success. She found the biscuit tin, broke a biscuit in half, and gave it to the owl to nibble on while she read the message. He gave her a strange look, as if she was being stingy. "You're a wee one, little sir. You may have the other half when you're finished that," Circe said, as she unraveled the scroll and began to read. "Dear Circe, thank you for your lovely, heartfelt letter. I wanted you to know I received it, and my mother had agreed to help me with the instructions for the travel charm you sent. There's so much more I want to say to you, but since we will be together soon, I think I will leave it until then. With kindest regards, Queen Snow White." Circe was ecstatic at the idea of finally meeting her cousin, Queen Snow White. She looked down at her dress and laughed. Well, I'd better change my clothes. Circe was completely disheveled from the events that had befallen her in the past weeks. She hadn't even bothered to look in a mirror, and she didn't dare now for fear of how frightful she surely looked. The owl tapped his little foot on the wooden table, waiting for his reward. She tossed him the other half of the biscuit, while she scribbled a hurried note to Nanny, letting her know Snow was on her way to Morning Star. Once she cleaned herself up and heard what Snow White had to say, she would continue searching through her sister's books. Circe just hoped she could find something before it was too late.